Everybody, welcome back. It's Mo again. Well, in this section, we're going to be looking at basic command line interface of a router. Now, again, what is the purpose of a router? The router actually connects you between different networks. The router connects you from the LAN to the WAN. The router connects you between two different LANs. I can make the router as a DHCP server. There's lots of features that I could actually do on the router itself. So there's a big benefit of the router. Like, think about it. Without a router, there's no internet access. Everybody has a router at home. Everybody has a router at work. For that case, I can actually get online. I can connect to a different network. The only difference is you probably have a solo router, which is small office home office at home, versus you would have a corporate router. Now, in our case, we're focusing on Cisco routers. I want to share an actual website with you folks, which is a really perfect site. And there's no way you should actually ever forget this site. And it's router dash switch.com. Look at this site over here, router dash switch.com. And when I go to products, I see routers, switches, firewalls, everything. So when I go to routers, I see Cisco routers. And look, there's ISR and there's ASR. ISR is integrated services router. ASR is aggregated services router. Now, the ISR is for small to medium enterprises, where the ASR is for like data centers for big enterprises. So, of course, the command line is the same. And look, there's different versions, like a 1900, a 2900, a 3900. But this is the speed, how many ports you actually have. But most likely the function is the same. So, what I want to do is I want to go back to my Cisco packet tracer. Now, here, right over here, once you open Cisco Package Tracer, the way you want to start working with this is I go to my actual network devices, right? And look, I have routers, switches, hubs. And you look at this wireless devices, firewalls. I mean, everything is actually right over here. So, for example, if I get myself a 1941, so I'm going to just click once on 1941 and just put it right here. I like to increase the size. And if I get an older one, 1841. You see this? So before the 1941, there was an 1841. What is the difference? If I maneuver the mouse over here, it tells me that it has fast Ethernet, two fast Ethernet ports, right? What is fast Ethernet? 100 megabits per second. Well, if I maneuver the mouse over the 1941, I have 2 gigabit ports, which means it's running at 1 gigabit per a second. All right. So the difference is the speed. Now, some routers, for example, if I get myself a 2911 and I maneuver the mouse, I have 3 gigabit ports. This one has 2 gigabit ports. So it depends. I mean, I could be adding modules to the router itself. So what I want to do is I want to focus on the 1941 router, right? So I'm going to highlight these and just X out and delete them. So right now I only have a router here. I'm just going to stick to a router. I like to give it a name. Router 1, let's say, for example, and it's 1941. At the beginning, I want to start with the command line interface. How does the CLI actually work? How do I actually start working with it? I mean, normally the way I actually connect is through a console. We'll see that soon. But for now, I'm just going to click on the router and I'm going to go to the CLI. See, look, these are the actual modules. I could zoom in. Look, as you see, I have 2 gigabit ports. I have a console port. I have an auxiliary port. We'll see this in more details. I have USB, which means I could back up my router configuration to a flash drive. And look, I could even turn off. Once I turn off, maybe I want to put a cover. All right. I want to get rid of the dust. So I could put the actual cover and then turn the router back on and go to the CLI. And look what it's doing. It's loading. This is actually the iOS. Inter-network operating system. It's loading the iOS to the router itself. We'll see the details of this, but for now, when you first turn the router on, there is no configuration on the router. So it tells me if you want to get into setup mode. It's always not. I like to do things manually, and that's how it's actually done in a corporate organization. So I'm going to press no over here. Just no. I don't want to be doing this and press enter. So press return to get started, which means you press enter. And now the router name is called router, and I see the greater sign. What is this called? This is user mode. So the first mode that you actually get in is actually user mode. Most likely user mode is to display information. You cannot do any actual configuration in user mode. Well, let's say I have no clue what commands I need to run over here. I put a question mark without pressing enter. And look, it tells me the commands that I could actually run in user mode. You see that? So for example, if I put the letter E and then I put a question mark, it tells me the commands that start with the letter E. You see that? That's how it works. If I put the letter T with a question mark, it shows me the commands that start with the letter T. I have telnet, terminal, trace route. See, I am limited in user mode. Most of the work that you do has to be in privilege mode. How do I get into privilege mode? Let me ask for help. And watch this. And look what it says. Enable turns on privileged commands. And this is the mode you're always going to be in to make changes and configuration on the router. So watch this. If I just type the letter E and I hit the tab key a few times, nothing happens. Why? Because I have two commands that start with E. There's enable and there's exit. So if I put an N and I hit the tab key, it will finish the command for you. And that's how you want to actually do some kind of work. And then I'm going to put a question mark. And if I see the CR, that's carriage return, that means guess what? I can press enter. So now look at this. From the greater sign, I have the pound sign. You see that? So I just switched from user mode to privilege mode. So now I'm actually in privilege mode by using enable. Let me ask for help. Let me put a question mark, right? How can I get out of privilege mode? And I can see there's a lot of commands over here. If I hit the space bar, is one page at a time. If I press enter, is one line at a time. If I want to get rid of the help, I do control Z. All right. So watch this, folks. If I put a question mark and I say, I want to turn off the privilege mode, which means I could use the disable command. So I do control Z. I type D and I ask for help. And now I can see all the commands that start with the letter D. So if I hit the tab key, nothing happens because I have more than one command that starts with what? With D. If I type in DI and hit the tab key, nothing happens. If I type DIS and hit the tab key, nothing happens because I have two commands that start with DIS. So I do DISA and hit the tab key, and then I could put a question mark, carriage return, I could press enter. Now I'm back to user mode. But as I said, most of the work is done in where? In privilege mode. So if I want to get into privilege mode, I could just type EN for enable, just like that. And I want to get out, I just type in DSA and I just press enter and I'm out. So EN, all right, gets into privilege mode. If I want to type disabled DSA to get out, and I could just press enter. So user mode is not much work that you could actually do. So EN, now I'm actually where? In privilege mode. Let's say I want to change IP addresses. I want to change the router name. I want to change the time zone. I want to do routing. I have to be in a different mode. So privilege mode is most likely for displaying information for troubleshooting. So what I need to get into is another mode, which is called global configuration mode. And that's if I question mark and I see configure, this is the command. All right. So configure is what I'm looking for. Remember, to get rid of the help, I do control C. So now I type in configure space, and now I could ask for help, and it tells me terminal, which is configure terminal T, and hit the tab key. Now I'm in configure terminal, and I can press enter. Now I'm actually in where? Global configuration mode. The more we go through the course, the more you start understanding which mode you have to be in. So if I want to go back, I could type exit. See that? I go back to where? To privilege mode. If I do exit again, I'm actually out also. That's another way. So EN and then config T is global configuration mode. So this is a different mode too. If I want to go ahead and configure an actual interface, like an IP address, a description, right? So I have interface on the router, most likely going to have two. One supports the internal and one supports the outside. So let me ask for help. Put a question mark. Is there an interface command? Yes, there is. There's an interface command. Select an interface to work with. All right. So Control Z. If I do INT and hit the tab key, there's the interface. And I could ask for help and I could see what interface am I actually looking for. Well, guess what? I want to do Control Z. Gets me out of it all the way back. And I want to see what interfaces I actually have on my router by using the show command. So if I do show, right, space question mark, I could see interfaces. See that? And then Control Z. So interfaces, and I press enter, and I can see I have gigabit 00. It's down. I have gigabit 01. These are the name of the interface and the VLAN. The best command to run. Again, all the show commands for now, let's know they're actually from where? Privilege mode. So show, another good command is IP question mark INT for interface, right? Then brief, BR, and I hit the tab key. So show IP interface brief and enter. This simplifies what interfaces I actually have. So I have gigabit Ethernet 00, gigabit Ethernet 01. Gigabit means 1 gigabit per second, which is 1,000 megabits per second, right? So check this out. If I do config T, now I'm actually in global configuration mode. If I want to exit out, I type exit, I'm back to privilege mode. I type exit, I'm back to user mode. So if I want to get into privilege mode, EN, right? Global configuration mode, config T, now interface mode, I know that I have interfaces gigabit 00 and gigabit 01. So I type in INT, then I put the letter G, hit the tab key, 0/0. Then I press enter. Now I'm actually in interface mode. We're going to see this again and again. So if I type in exit and go back over here, that's interface mode. There's another mode that we want to get used to, which is the line mode, which means, okay, how can I get into the router? I could connect directly, which is through a console, or I could remote in, which is either Telnet and SSH, and we will see that. So if I ask for help, is there a line command? Yes, there is. Configure a terminal line. You see this? So then I type in line space question mark. I could do a console, a VTY, an auxiliary, which is obsolete, and we'll see. So line, let's say C, and hit the tab key console, which means I'm connecting directly to the router. Put a question mark. I only have one line console 0. Now it says config dash line. You see, this is line mode. Okay, if I scroll up, I was in interface mode. This is global configuration mode. This one over here is what? User mode. This one alone on its own, which is the pound sign privilege mode. So watch this. Look, if I type exit, it goes back to global configuration mode. I type exit, it goes back to what? Privilege mode. I type exit, it goes back to user mode, as you see. If I do EN, that's what? Privilege mode, config T, global configuration mode, interface gigabit 00. I can simplify things. I don't have to improve English over here. You're not taking this class for writing. You look for shortcuts, enter. Now, I had to type exit a few times to go back to the original mode. I could do Control Z. Watch this. So let me just make sure the mouse is in. Control Z sends me back. Look, if I type something that doesn't exist, it's like, oh, translating domain server. I do. So in other words, I want to get rid of this, right? So I want to get rid of this. I do Control Shift and the number 6. If I type something that doesn't make sense and I press enter, it's going to start translating. Control Shift 6 stops it. We're going to see this. So again, config T, global configuration mode, interface, gigabit 00. This is interface mode. If I type end, it's the same thing as Control Z instead of exit. So again, config T, then let's say line on 0 for the console 0, then Control Z. It's the same thing. So Control Z and end is the same. There's another mode, which is a sub interface mode, and we'll see that, which means I could divide my physical interface to sub interface, which means sub networks. So watch this interface gigabit 0/0 dot, and I come up with a sub interface. And we'll see this. Look, now I have a sub interface mode, right? We're going to see all this. I just wanted to show you in this lecture how to switch from one mode to another. We'll see each mode in more and more details. But as you see, it's kind of simple by using the question mark. So don't panic if you type something and it doesn't exist and you press enter. If I'm in the wrong mode, let's say if I do Control Z and I type something that doesn't exist, I could do Control Shift 6. All right. So until now, we did not make changes on the router. What we're going to be doing is in our next lecture, little by little, we're going to be building our router. As he said, the router can be a DHCP server. The router can be what? For NAT. The router can be connecting between different networks. I could make my router as a firewall, right? So I want you to watch this video again and again and practice as what I'm actually doing to get your hands-on experience. So we'll see you folks in our next lecture. Bye now.